Intentional Currency podcast. My name is Yasmin. I'm the founder of the Intentional Currency, and our mission is to help Muslim women take control of their money, build wealth in a way that's pleasing to Allah, and feel confident making financial decisions that serve their families and their communities. In this podcast, we're bringing you real conversations from some incredible women who share our mission. These women are leaders, change makers, and financial literacy advocates from around the world. Together, we'll explore what it means to create wealth that's rooted in faith and designed to have a positive impact. Each guest brings their own journey, their struggles, their wins, whether it's setting up an emergency fund, learning how to invest, or figuring out how to manage finance and family. Our hope is that their stories inspire you, empower you, and remind you that financial empowerment is for every Muslim woman who wants it. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's get into the conversation. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the Intentional Currency podcast. I am so excited to be here with Fatema, who has so much to share on the topic of financial literacy, and specifically something that comes up quite a bit, which is the topic of marriage and money. So very excited to have you here today. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
You have a very unique background, and specifically your entrepreneurship journey. So I would love if you could share just like a little bit about yourself, your career, and also kind of what led you to be passionate about financial literacy.
Yeah, definitely. So my background is basically in psychology. So in terms of my career, I started off just working in psychology and supporting people with their mental health. And then I moved into doing training, which led me to become a psychotherapist. So that's how I kind of started my sort of formal career around a specific field. As I was sort of coming out of my training year, I found that working in the national healthcare system within the UK, it's very sort of layered in that you kind of have certain promotional opportunities, but there is a cap. And what I found was that there wasn't much space for creative input. And so I really wanted to do that. And so what I ended up doing was taking myself into an entrepreneurial journey and sort of setting up digital products and services. And then as that got busier, I ended up kind of building out a membership service that kind of put together all of those different digital products and allowed people to kind of access me through a more affordable and kind of like packaged item, if that makes sense. So that's how I was kind of led into entrepreneurship. And then I guess when I got into entrepreneurship, I didn't quite realize how much freedom you actually have to create amazing things for people that actually have some real unmet needs. And so through my sort of coaching membership, that kind of helped me build out a system that I felt that I could rinse and repeat with different kinds of needs that I could fulfill through digital products. So then from having like a careers coaching business, I then went into business coaching. And then I went into supporting people with entrepreneurship, and then also building out what we have now, which is a matrimonial service for Muslims, for single Muslims who are looking to get married. So it's been quite a journey from kind of just entering into a space where you care about mental and emotional health to then kind of coming full circle to thinking about things from a more holistic point of view. And I think when we think about financial literacy, that's a huge part of a person's emotional health and mental health and physical health, because, you know, when you think about insurance and you think about needing the funds to look after yourself from a physical perspective, if you have certain things going on that you need to be taken care of, you know, financial health is a big thing, and we have to talk about that. And it's really, really important, to pay attention to what that's like, as well as your physical and emotional health as well.
I completely agree that when we talk about mental and physical health, especially within women, that financial health is so underlooked, and there's such a clear connection between both of them. I wanted to ask you, because you're clearly a Muslim woman, as you mentioned, in an Indian Pakistani background. It's still, I feel, a little bit taboo to be talking about these things of financial plans and having these ambitious financial goals, wanting to have more than just the minimum. Have you come across any challenges or any, I guess, cultural beliefs along your way?
I think with my culture, whilst I am Asian, South Asian, I think a lot of the friends that I had a different mindset and had a more Western mindset. So I wasn't so sort of confined in the sort of traditions and the cultural views that typical people might have. But there was definitely kind of more around, like, I think for me, it was, I mean, I know what the stereotypical sort of ideas are perhaps around, women not being able to have their own money, or not needing to be financial literate because men will look after things. And I just think that my experience was completely different. So my mum was always sort of the main breadwinner in the home. And that was through difficulties that we endured, but also things that kind of pushed her into that position, which I now have a lot of compassion for her, and seeing her in that position at that time, like, it really kind of makes me aware of what she went through. And I think that seeing her in that position really helped me to think about, like, okay, what kind of woman do I want to be? And how do I want to set myself up so that I'm able to take control of my own finances? But definitely, like, I think that I feel that there was a lot of shame around
Mm,
talking about money, and perhaps shame around the woman being the main breadwinner, and the woman being the main person that wanted to get her finances in check. And I never, growing up, like, I never had any male role models that really took care of the finances, and that really took an active role at understanding how to deal with finances. And so I never really knew what it was like for males and females. All I knew was that the men in my life, or the men that I'm probably going to come across, are probably not going to take care of things as perhaps I would need them to, or that we could do collaboratively. And so instead, I'm going to have to do a lot of it. And that was a core belief that I did build, was that I'm solely responsible for every financial decision that I need to make. Um, and I need to make sure that I am very clever about this and very smart about this, and getting as much education as I possibly can, as quickly as I can, so that I can make these smart decisions, because I cannot rely on anybody else. And whether that's about investments or just general money, I know that that came from my experiences with my mum, because of the fact that I was just seeing her being the main breadwinner. Um, and like, just within the sort of community and the space that I lived in, um, I saw a lot of strong women doing their thing, and come from a line of strong women sort of educating themselves. And some of them are widows and didn't have a choice but to take action themselves. So it's almost like we were kind of pushed into that sort of position of just trying to be as smart as we can and not really relying on men. But that did come with its hardships of, I guess, perhaps being a little bit outcasted by other people in
mm.
the community, because of the fact that we weren't following the typical female route of just kind of sitting back and letting the male do things. But perhaps the outside world didn't see that actually we don't actually have a choice. There's nobody else to look after our finances and position. So as women, we have to take that role. So yeah, so I think that was kind of my experience in terms of culture and traditions, which I noted from a very young age was very different to, like, my other South Asian friends who came from sort of the typical families of, like, normal kind of parents, and having like grandparents, and having sort of generational wealth sort of trickle down into the family. They had a lot of that, and a lot of collective sort of funding and saving systems as well. They had a lot of that as well. Whereas I think me and my family, just within our small bubble, just didn't have any of that. So it was very much like, do what you need to, or literally just fall to the ground, or fall in a hole. And that was a very scary place to be in, for sure.
It is very scary. And I think that looking back, I feel like you can appreciate it because of where you are now. But I think in the moment, there are so many feelings of resentment and of fear and all of these things that we end up carrying with us.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of my clients who I work with when I talk about investing have similar stories,
Mm.
that they grew up seeing their mother struggle either because she was the breadwinner, or on the other hand, because she had no access to finances and perhaps lived through an abusive marriage or felt stuck, went through difficulties on the other extreme. And I think what I've noticed is that with a lot of women, what happens is they have taken on this independence. They've become financially literate. They have either strong careers or successful businesses. And the fear then comes up when it's time to get married.
Yeah.
Because then when it's time to get married, on the one hand, you want a spouse who is compatible and who understands finances because it becomes such a strong value in your life. And on the other hand, it's very scary to hand over that, I don't want to say power, but that financial responsibility to someone when you've seen the repercussions on your own. And I know you work specifically with women and men who are looking to get married. Is this something that you've seen in your work?
Yes. So I think financial literacy in the topic of marriage, within the topic of marriage, can be very bittersweet in that it's great that it's educating everybody, but it's also raising the anxieties along with the education that actually, hold on a minute, this is all the stuff that I need to think about. But are other people on par with that? Are other people at the same level as I am? And it's kind of raising expectations that men and women need to be at the exact same position, or people that they meet for marriage need to be at the exact same position financially in order for it to be a suitable marriage and in order for things to kind of move ahead. And I think what we're finding is that the topic of money itself is not a conversation that's being had widely or enough. And I wonder if that's because of these fears that are holding people back from having real conversations instead of sort of projecting their ideas and their expectations on other people. Because there's a difference between having a conversation and projecting your ideas. And the approach that you take in inviting those kinds of conversations is completely different. And I think some people can be very rigid in their sort of money beliefs and what they feel that they have got, so other people should have as well. Instead of kind of like talking about it collectively as like, what are our future goals? What are our future goals? What is it that we actually want to achieve, and where are you at with your finances? Like, how is it that you spend? What is your money relationship like? We're not asking these questions, and instead we're kind of like spiraling off assumptions around what people have in their life based off what we see. So, sometimes you might see a guy or even a woman who's maybe not that well put together. And so you will assume that they have little to no financial literacy, when actually they just might be a little bit like, some entrepreneurs who actually wear the same wardrobe every single day. I think a lot of people used to talk about Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs as well, wearing the same clothes every single day because it's one less thing to worry about, when actually that's a very smart thing because they're spending their energy and their time building things, being creative, doing different things. And I think that it's about, again, like this glitz and glamour of like having lots of materialistic things, handbags, shoes, great clothing. It's nice to have nice things, and it's good to have nice things and to have good style. But at the same time, like, we're basing them off appearance and aesthetic, as opposed to actually having real life conversations about what somebody's money relationship is like. And so I think it's difficult because like people talk about wanting to raise emotional intelligence and wanting someone that's got great emotional intelligence, but they're not looking inwardly at their own emotional and financial intelligence and whether or not they're actually looking at a person for who they are rather than the assumptions that they have. So yeah, I think it's really tricky because, the fears are real, and it's not about minimizing fears of like, if a person isn't going to work with you to deal with financial difficulties in a marriage, of course you want to think twice about perhaps marrying that person. But again, it's just this initial like, let's have a conversation about it rather than making assumptions, and see where that conversation leads. And also being open to the fact that you can be at two different places in your financial journey, but it is your mindset around that financial journey that matters the most. It might have been that two people have started at different times in their life because of previous circumstances, but they align on the mindset that they have about how they're going to spend their money and how they're going to save and take things forward. And so in that case, they could be a great sort of compatible couple. But again, because of these rigid beliefs, that person didn't start the same way that I did, or they're not as clever about it as I am, we could never work. When actually it's about, well, how about it's okay to teach each other different things about financial literacy as well, and actually being collaborative in doing courses together or adopting resources together or educating yourself with each other. These are options that people are ruling out because they're, again, just kind of being steered by their own sort of core beliefs and rigid beliefs and also assumptions as well, which is not helpful at all. And it's just creating a bigger divide in our pool of single Muslims, I do think.
I completely agree. And exactly what you said there, between having a conversation is not the same thing as projecting onto your potential spouse. And something that we talk about a lot is that, especially when you're dealing with finances, it's not about the numbers.
Mm-mm.
When you throw out a number and you say, I have $100,000 in my savings, or even $10,000 in my savings, there's someone listening that's going to say, oh, that's nothing.
Mm.
And there's someone else that's going to hear that and say, oh, wow, they're rich.
Mm.
And so it's so important to take away the significance of those numbers, which is difficult because on social media and in our society, there's so much pressure for 10K months, and you have to buy your house by this age, and you need to have this level of education, and you need to have all of these steps, that it's so easy to compare. But exactly like you said, what it comes down to in the long term is going to be having compatible mindsets around money.
Yeah. People are not asking, like you just said, I think you made an excellent point about 10,000, 100,000. The question is, how did you acquire those funds? How did you get to that point? How long did it take you? How did you get to a point of not having any of that to then getting to a point where you actually built that? Did you do it sustainably? Did it come from halal means? Did it come from haram means? Are we having those conversations, or are we just getting tied down to a metric or a number and just looking at a person for, dollar signs or pound signs? And that's not real compatibility. That's not real searching for a spouse. That's not being intentional in building a marriage. Instead, what that sounds like is actually being more focused on materialistic ideas and a notion in your head about what's going to keep you stable and secure. And a number is not going to keep you stable and secure. It's the mindset behind it, the person, the driver behind it, that's going to be able to give you that stability and security. It's those questions that we need to be asking.
I could not agree more. And I think that what happened is that we've given money and finances this power that ultimately only Allah should have. Because when you're going into a marriage and you're saying, I want to do this for the right reasons, this is something that's pleasing to Allah, I want to make this marriage halal, this is somebody who is a good partner, then you can't quantify the amount of barakah that Allah will decide to put in your couple. Whereas when you're looking at a partner and you're saying, this person is rich, or this person has a lot of money, this person's going to give me the lifestyle that I want, and that is your source of security, you've taken away the power of Allah and Allah's security. And that's a scary place to be, because ultimately that person can lose all of that money. And if your security is connected to that person's pocket, well, you're going to be in a very vulnerable position.
Absolutely.
And so I love that you're mentioning barakah, because this is the reason why we get married. Is marriage is such a beautiful thing. And we know that when people get married, when people have kids, Allah puts so much barakah in the homes. And I think that we've seen a lot of our parents who got married young, who had the right intention, and who started off with nothing, build significant portfolios in real estate and have incredible jobs. And this is because they really believed in the barakah.
Absolutely. And I think people don't realize the connection between Islam and finances as well, in the sense of this barakah, and understanding the tawakkul that we need to have in Allah as our sustainer. And again, it goes back to, this idea that, oh, if this person has £100,000, they're going to be able to look after me. It's like you said, that could be taken away at any point. Allah could test them. And that if that's taken away, where does that leave that person? Does that person have steadfastness in their Islam, in their relationship with Allah, that they can bow down to Allah and ask for forgiveness or ask for support or make dua? Do they have the ability to do that? And through that, do they have the ability to feel motivated to get back up and do what they need to do to be able to make that money back? Do they have those skills? And do they understand where those skills come from in terms of sustenance from Allah? Or is it that they've got this individualistic mindset where they think that actually it's all about me, 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 me? Because even without, Islam, if a person has that mindset, where is that going to leave you and them in a marriage and a relationship when you're trying to work through marital problems around finances? Is this person going to avoid? Are they going to shut down? Are they going to end up sort of like, digressing to other things, or trying to find distractions, or even going towards haram means? Or is it that they're going to be able to bring themselves back to the center and the core of who they are as a Muslim, and involve you in that process and lean on you as well? And again, that mindset of like that collective, collaborative relationship, that actually it's okay for a man to lean on a woman and it's okay for a woman to lean on a man. That's what a marriage is all about. And how are you going to do that? By putting Allah and your tawakkul in Allah at the center of it. And without that, again, and without an understanding of that, it's very hard to sustain yourself financially if you think that everything that you're doing comes from just your hard work and just your ability to be resourceful, when actually you could do minimal work, but if you had a lot of du'as and sort of a lot of belief and made a lot of du'as to Allah, and maybe you got up every morning for tahajjud, and you have true, like inner belief that really works, you have no idea what's possible. And that's when we really understand sort of the miracles of Islam and the miracles of Allah, is by doing those things. And again, like I think people really find it difficult to find the links between finances and Islam. And I do think that Allah has given us the finances as a beauty and a means to have lovely things. But equally, he's also perhaps given it to us as a means to test us. And I think that because money is able to buy so many comforts, it's one of the biggest tests we can have. And I think it's really important to be conscious of that through our journey, whether it's individually or even within a couple as well.
It's beautiful. That's, I try and remind myself of that all the time, that with every test or with every blessing that we have to be so mindful of whether this is bringing us closer to Allah or removing our tawakkul. And I think especially when it comes to finances, exactly like you said, that ultimately it's a test of, does your wealth remind you of the fact that Allah is incredible and Allah's been incredibly generous with us? Or is it making you feel like you've achieved something out of your own, intelligence or hard work or all of those types of qualities? And I think that we have to be so mindful of that when it comes to finances, and especially within a marriage where all of a sudden we're not just feeling those sorts of associations within ourselves, but we're also projecting those associations onto our partner. This person doesn't have enough money because they don't work hard, or this person doesn't have as much as me because they're not as smart, they're not as clever, as you mentioned, right? And that can be a very dangerous place to be, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's absolutely true. And I think it's about recognizing kind of these blind spots or opportunities to elevate yourself as a person and as a couple. And rather than looking at it from like a lesser negative scarcity mindset, think, okay, well, how receptive is this person to learning and to adapting? And I think that some people think, oh, I'm too late in the game now to learn how to do this. I've got kids, or, we're so far down as a couple into our marriage, like, what's the point? But it's never too late to learn how to go about your finances in a more smarter way. You might have been doing something for 20 years, but if you're doing something that hasn't been working and hasn't been making you feel confident or comfortable about where your finances are, then you can definitely make those changes. And it's just about being willing and open to doing that. And I think, like, just thinking about your platform, Yasmin, and just thinking about how I came to know of it, I've been involved in investments and understanding how to invest sort of from a Western point of view for a while. And it was only in the last sort of year when I started developing my relationship with Allah a lot more and being more conscious of Islam that I started to think, hold on a minute, like, what about this being halal? Like, where am I actually investing into? Where is my actual money going, through Vanguard and things like that? Like, where am I actually putting my money? Who is actually helping? And so I think when I came across your platform, I think representation matters so much. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to see yourself, a aspiring Muslim woman supporting other Muslim people to understand how to be halal with their finances and investments, because it's such a blind spot for our Muslim community. And so they think, and sometimes we can be so binary and we can think, oh, if it's not halal, leave it, not even going to touch it, not even going to give it any kind of time of day or thought. And so they're actually missing out on an opportunity where if they give it a little bit more thought and understanding, then they might be able to see how they can use the resources that Allah has given us. Because I think that there can be something good that can come from something that perhaps isn't the best for us. But it's understanding how to understand and use that resource in a way that's halal and that aligns with our values and our morals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it goes back to connecting your own personal finances with the larger community.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people are maybe sitting at home and thinking, I'm actually okay. I don't necessarily budget, or I'm not investing, but we're okay. We have our home. We're able to pay for our main expenses. And I think that it's so important to change the mindset of how we see money as being something that's from Allah and therefore a responsibility. And when we see it that way, we realize that our own finances don't exist outside of the context of everybody else in the community. And so when we're seeing other people suffering on the other side of the world, or even in our own communities, that's very much connected to the way that we manage our finances. And so by empowering ourselves and by making sure that we're maximizing every dollar that we get from our incomes, we're actually empowering our larger community. We're growing our impact. We're changing the optics of how people see Muslims. And so I think that it's very easy, because a lot of us have comfortable lives, alhamdulillah, to take it for granted. But we should feel a sense of urgency, and we should push ourselves to start different financial habits, to have a conversation with our spouse, to talk about what are our ambitious financial goals, what's the impact or the legacy that we want to leave here, because it really is all connected.
Absolutely. I think we're 100% agree. We're definitely all connected. And I think that, again, I think this is what our Islam and religion teaches us, is how to be together as an ummah, and how we can use our money not just to elevate ourselves, but to elevate other people. And I think it's that individualistic mindset where this is where we do get caught up in the cycle of survival, because you think that your money is just for you and it only needs to benefit you, when actually there's so many things that you can do with it, where, just the concept of sadaqah and charity. And I think people just don't understand. And I think that there's actually Western research that somebody has done on this, and we can definitely link it, where the concept of sadaqah and giving charity has actually proved that you will get money back in return for the money that you give. And this is what, and even the people that were researching this were completely baffled, because they were like, how does this make sense? And I truly believe that this is one of the miracles of Allah, that actually, if you don't understand the concept of sadaqah, then you're never going to understand what it means to look outside of yourself and what you can do for yourself, and look at your ummah instead, and how much you can give to them, and how much of that will come back to you. Because if you're feeding the ummah, you're feeding yourself, because you're part of the ummah, essentially. And people just don't see it that way, do they?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom, for all of your experience, and also for all of the incredible work that you're doing for our community, both in the work that you do in the psychology field, in business, and as well with marriages.
Thank you so much.